if I can start with the first question, just like, can you in general tell me what's going to happen tomorrow since the arrival, like step by step? What's it going to be like?
In some ways, it should just be a normal arraignment at 100 Center Street, which is, we go there, we get processed, we meet the judge, we say not guilty,
Mhm,
we set a schedule, and we leave. That's how it should be.
mhm,
Obviously, it's going to be different tomorrow. We have the Secret Service involved, and you know, there's security issues that are not normally present. So I think a lot of these questions I don't know the answers to. I don't know what it's going to be like tomorrow, except a circus-like atmosphere, I'm
mhm,
sure. But hopefully, the court part
mhm,
is done in an efficient and standard way.
mhm.
And I hope we just get out of there, within a
Yeah.
half hour.
But so you will hear the charges, I
Right.
suppose, and
Correct.
then will you reply immediately or will it take a couple of days?
No, no, no. The only thing we'll reply immediately with is not guilty. That's
Mhm,
what we'll say tomorrow, and we'll go from there. Obviously, we'll take time to evaluate the indictment and see what motions we want to file once we get all the discovery. So it takes some time.
mhm. Is ex-President Trump supposed to speak tomorrow as well, or mainly you?
No, he other than saying not guilty, he won't
Yeah.
say a word. He
Mhm,
shouldn't say a word. And then what he does afterwards, that's up to him.
mhm. With regards to charges, there are many, of course, reportings that it's over 30, some of them saying it's 34. What are you familiar with, and are you preparing for that, and what charges they are? And, we all heard it's the hush money for the porn star.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I mean, it's only about the hush money payments for sure. That's what this case is about, which is really ridiculous in a lot of ways. It's not really a case. There's no crime, but this is a political persecution. As far as the amount of charges or the counts, we don't know yet, but it's all going to be around the same thing. And, they could extrapolate and make
Mhm,
one check, one count, and another check, another count. So there's different ways to
mhm,
do it. But I'm not that concerned about the number of charges. It
mhm,
all emanates from the same allegation.
mhm. Did I understand it well that it's mainly 2 points? One is the campaign law, and another one is that it's from the money for the campaign, and second one that it's related to the campaign. Is it correct? Like these two main points?
Yeah, it's allegedly going to be false business records and to cover up a campaign law violation. But there is no campaign law violation. This is a federal campaign. He had no obligation to report those payments to the FEC, the Federal Election Committee. The law is clear on that. The FEC has already said that. Remember, this is not just a case where, um, you know, he should have reported and he didn't, and was it a mistake or not a mistake? No, he didn't have to report this. This was a personal expenditure. So I really don't know where they're going to go with this or how they think they're going to get to the end of the road, but they won't.
Mhm. So this was noted in the Trump organization records, right? Was it shared with any third party, or was it mainly for the internal
Great.
purposes?
That's a really great question. Actually, I'm impressed with that question because not everyone asked that question. The American journalists don't seem to understand that, but that's exactly the
Mhm,
turning point. It was not recorded with any third party. There was no obligation to. He didn't take a tax deduction for it, so there was no IRS filing, and he didn't have to file this with the
mhm,
FEC.
mhm,
So there was no FEC filing. So it wasn't filed
yeah.
anywhere. So, it's not a false business entry if it didn't have to be filed anywhere, and it wasn't.
Mhm. And who do you think is behind it? Is it like Biden? Is it the Democratic
So
Party?
it's Soros carrying the weight for the Democratic
Mhm,
Party. The people on the left, his financiers, the people who finance his campaign,
mhm,
the people who will finance him in the future to go further in politics. But it's the far left that's supporting this because anyone that's intellectually honest, whether you're on the left or on the right, would not want this charge brought because
mhm,
it's not a real case
mhm,
and it doesn't equate to a case factually or legally.
mhm. So it's George Soros supporting the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is sort of doing that.
Yeah, well, I don't know whose money's behind it, if it's Soros or someone else, but the fact of the matter is he is a big donor to
Mhm,
the Democratic Party. He happens to put these new DAs in office that don't really prosecute real
mhm,
crimes. If you walk around New York City, there's the violent crime is up,
mhm,
and we don't prosecute them the way we used to. But this DA decides he wants to prosecute a
mhm,
president for a completely legal transaction over an alleged affair that happened seven
mhm.
years ago. It's honestly, it's disgraceful that this is even happening.
You know, I don't really see the logic in that because from what I saw in some news, his ratings went actually up like 10% for 1 month. So
Yeah.
what do you think? Like, did they like didn't think it through or?
You know, everything with Donald Trump is different. Most people, when they're under criminal investigation or get indicted, their campaign is over. They disappear. Their career is finished. Donald Trump gets stronger somehow. That's because he has always said they are weaponizing the justice system to get political opponents, and that's what this is an example of. Clearly, that's what this is an example of. And his supporters have become emboldened now. Say, look, it's true. Everything he's saying is true. They're weaponizing. If Donald Trump or John Smith, there's no way this case would ever been brought. If Donald Trump weren't running for president again in 2024 and was not the leading Republican candidate, there's no way this case would have been brought. So, the fact of the matter is they're doing this to interfere with the election. And his supporters and people who maybe were in the middle are now saying that's outrageous. So they are supporting him. So, yeah, I don't think they thought that through.
Well, that's a bummer. That leads me to a question. Well, you already have spoken about it that you're disappointed about the system, but I was wondering, is it like a longer term process of the system going basically in the wrong direction, or is it just based on him that they don't like him so much that this is happening?
Oh, it's based on him. It's based for a hatred for this man that a lot of people have. Um, that they are allowing their judgment to be clouded. I mean, they will do anything to keep him out of office again, and they will do anything to try and punish him. And even if that means bending the law or ignoring the law, and that's what's happening here. It's a dangerous new trend in this country that we're now using prosecutors' offices as political weapons. But that's what's happening, and that's what this is. There's no question about that. And the danger is, okay, now it's Donald Trump. Tomorrow it could be a Democrat. The day after that, it could be my brother, your sister, and that's we don't know. How if you're able to start doing that, the system really becomes a dangerous one.
So we cannot set a precedent, basically.
Right, it's a dangerous precedent, and it's unfortunately it's the Rubicon has been crossed now. So now we have to make sure that this is denounced globally and denounced very loudly, and that's what we're going to do.
And also in one of your interviews, you were asked about the case of John Edwards,
Hmm.
which happened in the past. It was on the federal level. Do you think that this one is on the state level because of the connection of Soros and Bragg,
Yeah,
or because they don't have
obviously.
strong case enough, or why is
Yeah,
this like a
it's
lower?
it does. That's another great question. I mean, this is a federal election, so if federal campaign laws were violated, the federal prosecutors would normally take this case, not the state prosecutor. The federal prosecutors rejected this case against Donald Trump. The FEC rejected the case against Donald Trump. So the fact that a very left wing state prosecutor is taking up a federal case that was been rejected by the federal authorities is, I think, proof positive that this is just to pursue Trump. It's like, here's the guy. Now let's find a crime, any crime, and that's what they used to do in the years of dangerous dictatorships. Not what we used to do in the United States of America.
So are we entering a dictatorship here?
We're entering a dangerous area where politics have influence over the justice system, and politics are being um, used to weaponize the prosecutors' offices. As I said, it's a Democratic prosecutor supported by Democratic financiers, his campaign, going after the right wing candidate, the Republican candidate who's leading. You know, in Texas, maybe there's a Republican prosecutor who doesn't like the Democratic candidate who's leading. And now the same thing can start happening because the threshold now is so low that it's setting a dangerous precedent.
And you have been in this career for 32 years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
Um, how would you compare it to the cases you had in the past? Is this one like the most challenging one, or only the most sort of observed one?
Yeah, like, I've had a lot of high profile cases, as you know. Um, Factually and legally, this is the least challenging one, right? Really, if you just look at the law and the facts, this should be the least challenging one of my career. Unfortunately, that's not what's at play here. There's many more things aside from that at stake, like the politics, the desire to bend the rules to get one person. Um, the judiciary has to play fair here as well, the judges, and so there's a lot of things that enter into the equation that, normally if this were just a case we looked at from a um, standpoint of facts and law, I'd say, well, this is the easiest case I've ever had. But unfortunately, it's probably going to be the hardest case I've ever had.
So now I wonder, how many percent, or what do you think, like these outside influences have impact on this case? Because you said otherwise you would just look at the facts, but
Hmm.
now you have all this hassle around it. Like, how much weight would you put into this?
The outside influences,
Yeah.
it's why we're here. I mean, it's why we're here. Like, this guy was pressured. He wasn't bringing a case against Trump. One of his prosecutors quit the office,
Mhm.
wrote a book in violation of rules of ethics and in violation of grand jury secrecy laws. He wrote a book, and that put more pressure on this prosecutor. And suddenly, after that book came out, all of a sudden he's back in the grand jury to try and bring a case against Trump. And it's clearly he succumbed to pressure, and that's a prosecutor is not supposed to. You have too much power as a prosecutor. To me, this is the biggest abuse of prosecutorial discretion I've seen in my 32 years.
Mhm. Wow, that's something.
Yeah.
And have you been in touch with Mr. Cohen or Miss Daniels?
No, we're not on a speaking basis. We're not very friendly, but I will see them in court one day, and I look forward to that.
I was disappointed not seeing Miss Daniels coming today. Maybe
Yeah.
she will, I guess. What do you think will happen in the future for Mr. Bragg? And are you thinking about like suing him?
We're thinking about getting rid of this case first, making sure this case is dismissed the way it should be. And, I think his legacy has been solidified now. I
Mhm.
think he's a political pawn, someone who violates the oaths of office of a prosecutor, who's bringing a case that he's only bringing because the person's name is Donald Trump. And I think at the end of this, he's going to be disgraced and will not have much of a future. As far as suing or anyone like that, we just want to get rid of this case. That's all
Mm.
I'm thinking about.
And there are also, reports that President Trump doesn't really favor this current judge that much.
Yep.
You mentioned you have not had him on this case
Correct.
before. At which point would you be thinking about changing him after today, if that would be happening?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to look. Don't forget, he was the judge on the Trump Organization trial, and they had some issues with him there. Um, but we have to see how this unfolds, how he's going to be treating us, and how fair he's going to be. But the second there's an issue where we believe that there's justice is not being done, and the judge isn't being fair, if it ever comes to that, we'll do what we would do with any other client,
Mhm.
which is make a recusal motion if need be. Then we don't know if that's going to happen.
Mhm. Sure. Do you expect any twists, like changes to the standard procedure? And
I'm sure there's going to be. I can't even imagine what they're going to be, though. So, the answer is probably yes. But, until we're there, I don't know.
yeah,
It's all a big guess. This is everyone's first time at doing this one.
yeah. And last questions. There are many talks about the mugshot and handcuffs. You already said that you don't think this will be the case, that he will be wearing him it because he's like a
Yeah.
special
There's no
person.
no handcuffs are going to be involved here. The Secret Service is guarding him and whatnot. Everything else, pictures and stuff, regular operating procedure, that'll probably happen.
Mhm.
I'm sure the district attorney's office is going to try and make a big show out of this to get more publicity out of it. But we're hopeful that this happens the way a normal arraignment would happen. But I'm not that optimistic about it. I'm sure they're going to try and get as much out of this as they can.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We're not, President Trump is not a person who cowers. He's not afraid,
Yeah.
and he's a very tough guy, and they're not going to scare him. So we'll be fine, or me.
And how many times do you think you have been in touch with him regarding this case? Like how long did the preparations go for before tomorrow? If
Oh,
you can
we're in,
share.
we're in touch every day,
Mhm.
every day. So
Okay,
we'll
sounds
see.
like working hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And last question: did you have to think a lot before taking this case? Because President Trump once mentioned that the lawyers who are working for him, they have tough times sometimes.
Yeah, I did, but I also know that I how I practice law, and I know that I stay in my lane. I do what's right. I fight very aggressively and very hard for the client, but I do it within the boundaries of ethics. I'm not violating my rules of ethics or my personal credos
Mm.
for anyone. But I'm a very aggressive and hard litigator. As far as what people think about that, I'm not that worried about that. My track record speaks for itself. I have my clients speak for themselves, so
Mm.
I'm not trying to win a popularity contest. I'm trying to fight for a
Yeah.
client.
And last question. What do you think is the most important for a lawyer to win a case?
Knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to speak to regular people on the street. I grew up in a poor area in Brooklyn, and I've been pretty successful at speaking to regular
Mm.
people, um, and really believing what you say, like believing it. If you don't believe it and you're just up there speaking as a lawyer, that's pretty obvious. But I believe a lot in this case. I
Mhm.
believe in the defense of this case, and it makes me angry that we have to go through it, but that will give me some
Mhm.
additional
Stamina.
ammunition, stamina.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome very much. Thank you.